All right. All right, my friends. What is up? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Charlie Shrem, and you are listening and watching another epic episode of Untold Stories, where twice a week together we get to dive deep with some of crypto's most influential leaders to truly understand how this movement came to be. And through that, we get some really cool stories and we get to weave a whole nuanced, untold narrative of where we are going right now. So, if like the whole industry in crypto land and Bitcoin is on this train, we are on the engine, on the tracks, following this like day to day, week to week, all the updated situations, but really like diving deep and understanding why we came here, and more importantly, why people are building what they're building and how they're doing it and how we can all gain and benefit from that. And I'm really excited today to introduce my guest, Evan Chang from Miston Labs. Evan, thank you so much for coming on Untold Stories today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here, Charlie.
There's a lot of really cool things that we can talk about because you were part of the team at Meta that worked on um, all these different the cryptocurrency blockchain initiatives. You helped lead Novi Financial, and you were the director of research and development. You worked at Apple for a long time, and you really, really understand systems. Um, you led teams with uh, across various programming languages, runtimes, compilers, really understanding like and I have a lot of questions that I'm going to ask you regarding like um I was talking to another guest last week about why he thinks that should not be programming language non-agnostic, where like Ethereum launched with Solidity, but I think like Neo blockchain, you have the ability to have all these different programming languages baked into it. But at the same time, there are a lot of limitations to what our blockchain infrastructure can actually do. You know, we're going out there and we're building all these different tools, and we're building. I'm getting pitched. So I'm the a GP of a fund, Druid Ventures, and I sit on investment meetings for a few hours every day, and we're getting pitched all the time by people that are building products for retail, for NFTs, and for the metaverse. But I don't think we're there yet. I think that the infrastructure under the hood still needs to be built out. A lot of money needs to be spent, and we need to continue bringing on all these engineers and developers because they are building the products that we want to use right now. And we know our whole industry is very efficient. So, Evan, I know it's a lot that we're going to be talking about all these different things, but I guess um, to jump right into it, what are those current limitations that you see in across all over crypto land, and what type of tools are you building to solve these? Because you just launched, congratulations, your first permissionless layer one. So it's really exciting, and you guys got a rock solid team. So, and again, thanks for coming on Untold Stories.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about these. Where shall we start?
I don't know.
Uh,
Tell me like where your first kind of aha moment was for Bitcoin, for crypto. You were working on the original Facebook teams. Is that when you first discovered it?
before, right? So kind of got into crypto a couple years before that, probably 2016. I mean, I've always been sort of somebody very interested in the future, right? How things change, how technology, how brain changes. So when I first got exposure to Bitcoin, Ethereum back then, was I initially it's like I'm not quite sure what this is, but it's interesting because there's a lot of energy around it. So I dug into it a little bit. It didn't take me long and at all to understand the potential. Right, I get it. Bitcoin is this sort of a digital gold, transfer, store value. I see the potential there. Ethereum got me very interested because here we are. Here's a new platform, a new kind of a ledger or database, how we want to call it, but it's programmable and has the trust kind of model that I immediately see the potential. It can be used to replace middlemen or the centralized kind of third parties that act as intermediary. I see that potential right away. But as somebody who's I call myself a professional pain in the ass, right? Because I always go around saying, in these big companies, I worked there for 16 plus years. I always go around and say, well, this can be done a lot better. Let me show you how. That's the way I like to operate. bit of a maverick. So when I saw Ethereum, it's like, okay, this is promising, this is interesting concept, but the implementation isn't there. This is not going to be sufficient to help grow this ecosystem into this massive thing where every application could be using this infrastructure, this ledger to be running a smart contract. I'm sure there's the ecosystem will make rapid progress on this, and I'd like to be part of it. So giving sort of my background building large scale systems and tooling for everyone, especially have opinions about programming language, I thought I had an idea was sort of people it's needed to build these kind of infrastructure is going to last us a long, long time. Really, foundation of the future. At that point of the industry, I didn't think that I could attract the kind of talent that's needed if I were to go out and do a startup. Um,
Really?
I thought the maturity level isn't there. Most people don't quite get the potential yet. So it probably would take a bit longer for people to come around to it.
Do they get it now though? Do they
Yeah,
get
yeah.
it yet?
Definitely, I think a lot more. Right, look at the team we have right now at Instant Lab. There's like we're almost 50 people across the board, top notch people from Google, Facebook, Apple, you know, you name it. Right, all these companies, big companies, and these are very very senior people. They have had a lot of success in their career. People are getting it now, so they are coming into the space now. I'll say in the last few years, it's very very clearly people are coming in, but back then it wasn't the case. Back then, if you ask most people working, kind of a senior people in various industry, most will be very skeptical. This is going to lead to anything real. So, in terms of the overall timeline, right, 2016, 2017, I was definitely not early. I was pretty late to this. But even when I consider myself late and I look at across my peers and everybody, people didn't see the potential. I mean, to be frank, even today, I mean, some of my former colleagues will say, "Well, this is still mostly a scam, right? It's a way to extract money from the gullibles and all that." They just don't quite get it. We have a way to go in kind of in terms of this narrative, in terms
Yeah.
of mainstream understanding the potential.
There's definitely like a positive and negative to it, right? At the same
Right.
time.
Definitely, yeah. Any early industry, people going to move fast and try to make money, and yes, there's always players that maybe cut a few corners. So it's definitely very very polarized.
So now you guys all came over and you started Miston Labs and you're building out essentially like permissionless foundational infrastructure for Web3. And what that means is infrastructure for Web3 that's not owned by one company.
Right.
Now, you worked for these large companies for a long time. Why the radical shift?
Well, it's absolutely necessary. I think there's a degrees of decentralization. I wouldn't call us like maximalists, right? Everything, everybody can run a node, right? It has to be only running on Raspberry Pi or lab, so on and
Yeah.
so forth. But I think having, not having one or a few big company controlling this, the infrastructure is critical because it's meant to be a public infrastructure. Again, right? What is powerful about this, public ledger, right? Or you want to call a distributed database or a replicated state machine is that, right? The trust model. You don't trust a single entity. You have to trust two-thirds of them because the economic incentive, they're honest and because they're meant to do good for the world. So that is important. You cannot have a single entity controlling us. So yes, I work for big companies and I understand the benefit of having the centralized model. Sometimes you move faster. Sometimes you kind of build better experience, right? Because it's
Yeah.
vertically integrated. But also, no, that is not the way to go for something like this. It is essentially private sector building sort of the next iteration of the internet of assets. It's something meant to move assets around. The trust aspect is super critical. So
Yeah, I
so we
mean,
need to do it right. Yeah.
we all we all grew up in the iPhone era, right? And remember reading about how the App Store works, and if you use Apple as like one example,
Right.
if it was up to Apple, I guess the whole Web3 or whatever we call the future, internet that we're all using, the experience will be controlled, not for like nefarious reasons, but just because it's a better experience. Like I still use an iPhone because the experience is amazing, and I know that it's a walled garden and it's what I'm getting into, but I like that apps have to potentially
Sure.
pass this, these tests and go through certain like qualifications and user experience type of things. That's important, but I guess we're all learning the mistakes now. The internet that we've been all using for the past 20 or 30 years or longer isn't capable of doing what we need it to do. So now it's like the next step.
Right, very much so. Right, we enjoy the user experience of these walled gardens, but at the same time, giving up a lot of our control of our assets, and the asset can be anything you produce. Can you be your words, your photos, and everything? You're giving away that. So it's a good trade-off, right? So I mean, put it this way, I think on the infrastructure side, the control cannot be there. But on the product side, the product builder want to have more kind of a, they have opinion, right? It's something they're building. They want to provide the kind of experience for the users. So some level of control in terms of user experience is fine. But again, right, you need to understand what you're giving up, right? So the amazing aspect of Web3 is you could still have that kind of experience, but not giving up the control what is essential to you. You still have ownership of your assets. Instagram, for example, if you still have that same experience of browsing Instagram, posting, and everything, but at the same time you have control of your photos, your videos, right? That is what this is about. Uh, I'm not saying we're there yet. We're nowhere near that, but that's the vision.
I could see a future where every photo you take on your phone instantly becomes an NFT and stored on IPFS. And then when you're using like an Instagram type of application, Instagram now doesn't have to like index and manage all the photos because there's like an integration. Is that the type of technology that we're building out now?
Well, I, I I don't think it makes sense for everything to become NFT, right?
Yeah,
But
no, of
the
course.
user should have that choice of saying, "Hey, this is something I want to own." Right? Yes, I'll. It can be created as NFTs, not on a public ledger, right? That's the thing, right? The whole idea is you, rather than putting something in this private box where it's controlled by an entity, by a product, you move on something that's a public infrastructure, and then you still hold on to the key and say, okay, now platform and products, I give you permission to display this, but I'm going to take, you know, the profit that generate from it, and you as a facilitator bringing me audience, you can get a cut of the profit, right? And that is what this is about.
It's so cool. It's like having rights and things like that kind of follow across from like one thing to another. What are I mean, what are you building? You think you're building products now and infrastructure for users of like film and TV? Are we looking at NFTs for like governments? I was having dinner with the mayor of my city last night, and he literally we were talking sitting there talking about crypto the whole time, and the questions always led back to what can I do? Like what can we do? Should we
Right.
do grants? Should we do like ready to go? They're
Right.
ready to go. I just what do we do?
There's a couple questions here. What were we doing, right? So I think let's take a step back, right? A lot of people talk about I'm sure you've seen this on Twitter. Web one is read only, Web two is write, Web three is own. And we talk about the ownership assets. But what people fail to realize right now is right now, yes, you own these assets, but what you're owning is read only, right? NFT right now is basically read only. So it's kind of limiting what you can do. What I mean by read only, right now, the NFT standard ESC 721, basically, you cannot really capture much metadata on it. There's a couple of reasons for it, right? One is because the protocol is very limited, right? The standard is very limited, right? So you basically contain a single URL. that point to some assets off chain that can be stored on IPFS, could be stored in an internal database somewhere. You're just pointing to it. So you're not really, the whole asset's not on the blockchain. It's basically the record ownership on the blockchain. So that means, and also because it's so expensive right back onto the blockchain right now. So you kind of have to decouple where you store the assets, where you store the metadata if that comes with it. So it's not really, the assets not on chain. So
Yeah,
what
it's
this,
true.
yeah, I mean, but this is limiting, right? So you already
Yeah.
seen examples of token basically acting as sort of gatekeeper or tickets to clubs, Telegram, Discord, and all that. That is cool. But think about it. What if it's right as well, in addition to read? Then you can capture engagement, right? It's like, now we sell, oh, you are visiting this Telegram, you contribute all that. And that can
Wait
be,
a minute. How does that so sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is kind of cool what you're talking about
yeah,
here. So the current like everyone is doing the same thing and everyone's going to smile listen because they
yeah,
know every company in the space is pitching on like being an R&D minting studio or whatever. And so what you're saying is that the relationship of the NFT holder doesn't end once the NFT's minted per se, that there's still like writing going on and there's that it's kind of growing. The NFT is evolving
changing.
in
Yeah,
real time.
yes, right. So think about it, right? When we're talking about new infrastructure for assets, it should expand the possibilities, not limiting it. So right now it's very limiting because the asset is basically, once you mint it, it's static. You're really not really changing it. So think about the possibility. NFT as in-game assets. As the game progresses, the NFT changes with it, right? You're capturing assets, capturing information. If I'm leveling up in the game, my character as an NFT should, increase in level, experience, and all that. Why limit it to be static only? That's what I'm talking about, and that's because the current infrastructure doesn't allow this for this. If you
You can
have to,
create even like augmented reality type of experiences where that's the relationship now. So it's like imagine an NFT, and I would add this would be a great example of like imagine if like your favorite clothing store that had online shopping and in person issued some NFT that it's your kind of like habits, shopping habits, and your health and all these different things, and it was interacting as you're shopping and change. Like, there's so many things that you can do,
yeah,
but
yeah.
people would be more comfortable doing it because that data is kind of I'm holding
You
it and
actually
then
own it.
choosing.
Right, right, exactly. If everything is on the public ledger, you actually own it. The only thing you do is you control the key, and you have to say, let's say the store issue a loyalty NFT to you, Charlie, and you basically own it, but you give the store the right to update it when you're in the store, right? So they know it's like, wow, you just shop here, 5 times in the last 2 months. You are a premium user. Here's discount, right? And think about this, right? If because you wholly own it, you always have that with you. Let's put it this way: another retailer that could be affiliated retailer of that store, they say, "Hey, I see you own this NFT. That's your loyalty card, and you're a great consumer. We want to give you the same benefit the other store give you." Right? Think about
Ah, yeah.
think about the power of something that is on the public ledger, not in an internal database of some store. Right? Imagine that model for Amazon Prime users.
What I like about this is it and it'll be a very positive side benefit is it'll create a more equitable playing field for everyone. So the questions of like who is the person behind this potential like NFT, it's not that it won't be asked. It will be in financials and regulate things like that need to be regulated. But when it comes to like shopping for clothes, it won't matter who the person was, where they came from, and all these like other type of prejudices. It's solely based on the spending habits and the potential like debt repayment and your credit, your social credit, and all these other things again that you own and control. And I see that as like really, really like making the world a place that I want to live. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the technology can be abused, right? You don't want to capture too much information on chain, and definitely not personally identified information because the history is there forever. If you leak it accidentally, you got hacked, right?
Oh
There's no
yeah,
way
good point.
to trace it. So you have to build it right. You have to be careful. But something, as you say, kind of a loyalty card. You know, it doesn't capture your personal information. You don't, right? That's very different. Otherwise, if you log on to some storefront, have your credit card information, your address, and all that, none of these things needs to be on the NFT, right? So only your spending habits anonymized. For example, just saying, hey, this is a shopper that spend in this tier, for example, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of way you can build it this right. Uh, Again, right? That's potential. The infrastructure just the tooling needs to be there.
So we have up until this point over the last 10 years, we've had this sort of like, and so pre ERC 721, ERC 1155, which were like kind of the first few standards for what I call now like smart tokens, just when I'm explaining it to people who are not in the industry. Up until now, we've had these kind of like dumb tokens, if you will. You'd see a project launch, a billion of them, 100 million. Bitcoin has 21 million. Ethereum has a hard cap. It did, it didn't. I'm not really sure at the moment. I think it was introduced, but I'm not sure if it passed. I'm not honestly up to speed on like the Ethereum local politics. Although it'd be so cool if someone started like a news agency just of the in blockchain kind of like voting governance and politics that kind of goes on. But so you have going back to my question, you have like the dumb tokens, and then we've had this now. It's like we're moving into this world of all smart tokens and what we now know them as NFTs. And I have this like thesis that most blockchains in the future, most tokens in the future will be made up of like the of NFTs. You will have the dumb token model
Mhm.
of the past will kind of stay in the past, and you'll see these blockchains and even governance tokens will be some variation of like an NFT, whether it's like across multiple EVMs or it's through like a Cosmos ecosystem type of thing. You can do really cool things. And you're
Mhm.
probably like, "What's my question?" Um, what I'm getting to is stable coins. You worked on the stable coin for Facebook for Meta that was launched at DM, and I'm a big fan of stable coins, and I think it really powers the our whole crypto land today. But stable coins are pretty much dumb tokens, right? One to one. How do you think algorithmic stable coins are going to work? What will be the relationship between stablecoins and NFTs? What's the future of this?
Um, so the way we're looking at things is there's no, you know, yes, there's fungible and non-fungible tokens, right? But ultimately everything just assets. I don't know what the relationship with stablecoins and NFTs are at this point. You could use NFTs to represent anything. That's the point I was trying to make anything for. So maybe it will be an NFT that was embedded value inside it. So it has, kind of a stable coin value, $1 in addition to some assets, right? The way you should think about it is NFTs should be more structured object that can wrap anything into it inside it and can be composable. So, we shouldn't restrict our thinking to, you know, just ERC 721 type of NFTs. That's what I'm saying. So if you broaden the concept of NFT to be anything, any asset that you can represent with some structure type, then you realize, well, the sky is the limit. You can do anything, represent any kind of asset on chain. So maybe wrap stablecoin, maybe it's represent some kind of other assets. Maybe represent assets with changes over time as you utilize them. Um, so this is not a question I think I have a clear answer right
Yeah.
now. Right now, we just need to provide sort of the possibility of experimenting and building this kind of product and see um, people are so creative, right? You give them the tools to build anything they want, they're going to create them. We'll see what sort of new type of stable coin that's going to come out. Maybe it's based backed by different kind of assets, not just US dollars or fiat currency. Could be backed by art. Could be backed by you know, commodity or any kind of other kind of assets.
So I want to talk about um, your blockchain and some of the bottlenecks that you think exist, and maybe you can kind of teach the listeners about how there's, when it comes to uh, all blockchains, especially from Bitcoin, how consensus is reached when it comes to all transactions happening in real time. It's, you have 10-minute blocks, you can have 21-second blocks like Ethereum, but that model you think is fundamentally flawed, correct?
So here's the way you think about it. Take a step back, right? Conceptually, if you have two assets, let's say there's two NFTs, NFT one, NFT two, they're completely disjoint. There's no overlap between them, right? One is a Bored Ape NFT, one is some other, I don't know, music NFT. Now you have a whole bunch of transaction. Let's say, query and modify object one, a whole bunch of transaction, query and modify object two. They all happen. Now they are, because they all issue in this kind of a time period together, they form the same block. They've been in order. Think about that for a second. Why do you care about the order in between them? There's a zero contention between them. So you're
It's like
just
if I have my NFT of a Bored Ape or whatever future variation, and I want to join a game with and turn my identity, which across this NFT has my identity across multiple other like mediums and avenues and other games and shopping and real life stuff, and could be related to my school. Maybe my teacher has to allow me to even play the game that night or whatever it is, or my parents. Everything is a transaction. Everything is a transaction on chain, right? And that's doesn't need to be.
that's not the point, right? I think the point is, right, this whole global consensus model where you're ordering a whole bunch of transactions in the same block. Think about it for a second. Vast majority of these transactions have nothing to do with each other. They're not writing to the same memory if you model them correctly. They're not touching the same resource. You shouldn't care about the ordering between them. So this is wasteful. Right. So far, the blockchain industry hasn't figured out a way to be able to parallelize this process of ordering transactions that are relative to each other. Right.
Do they
There's a
get ordered later?
no. I mean, right now the model is they order, during this consensus, right, kind of
Yeah, in
process.
basic real
Basically,
time. But how
yeah.
does it work with you?
So basically, our model is everything is parallelized. We parallelize the ordering of things, right? So object one, object two, object three, kind of basically all the transactions modifying it. That there you have a natural ordering of dependency. So we're ordering, we're parallelizing the ordering process for the transactions that modify owned object, right? If any object has a single owner, then only that owner has the right to modify it. So that's the key thing. So we're parallelizing ordering. For the other kinds of transaction, let's say you're doing an auction, a bidding on the same object. So you can
Oh
have
yeah, that's a good one.
you have multiple accounts issuing transaction on the same object. So these objects are not owned; they're shared among multiple accounts. Only in those cases, all the transactions targeting the same object need to be ordered. But now you don't need to do this global ordering of all the transactions that's not related to each other. So the trick is only order the transaction that have relationship with each other. So, but because the way we model assets on chain, everything is a distinct object. You can tell the sort of the relationship between them trivially through the sort of because the programming model, the data model enforce it. So this allows us to basically parallelize, kind of this ordering process at a much finer granularity, and that's why you can have this kind of horizontal linear scaling.
I think I'm wrapping my head around how it works and kind of like the use cases of it. Are you able to are you a, are the parallel uh are the parallel processes, the parallel transactions that are happening, are they being kind of time stamped so you can check if you wanted to, like how do you timestamp? How do you validate across the whole network?
So so our blockchain is very different. We're tracking the progression or the changes related to each objects. Then at every epoch, when it's off the critical path, basically they will construct the state just like other blockchains. So in the end, there will
Ah.
be blocks, but we're moving it off the critical path. So you know, it's very, very computation
Oh,
intensive.
that's very cool though.
Yeah.
When is that epoch? How often?
Uh, TBD, but it could be. We can define arbitrary time that makes sense for the system. So that's something we'll release more information about. But it's not something you wait a long time for, right? So, but at the epoch stage, right? So we form the states, and you can query them. The key thing here is that makes querying states cheap, that optimize, kind of for querying. During the issuing of transactions, we optimize for writing things onto the blockchain. Right, we're tracking the progression of the state changes of objects very efficiently by moving away, by parallelizing all the agreements, but by moving the computation states, off the critical path. This enable quite a few different things about with the blockchain. As I mentioned, it's completely parallelizable now, so we can basically linearly scale the system. We demonstrate with if each validator runs a MacBook Pro right now, consumer grade machine, we can do 120,000 transactions per second. So on AWS is with a bigger machine, it's going into the hundreds and thousands, and if you add additional machines, it scales linearly up. So, and then also because we're moving all this computation of the Merkle trees and all these kind of expensive state off the critical path, we now have a system that can allow you to store on chain and very cheap, and it's also linearly scalable. So these plus the very high speed finalities, the sub-second, plus the object model allow you to do all the things we're just talking about, right? Dropping NFTs to everybody, because now you can store millions of objects on chain, and all these objects can represent things that have structure to them. You can write back to them. So that's a very fundamentally very different.
Yeah. What will be the relationship between this blockchain and other blockchains? Are you building in SDKs to have cross-chain compatibility and things like that?
So yes, so we will build bridges for ERC20 type of tokens because it's important for people to be able to move
Yeah.
assets. Uh, but the other thing we have already done is something we call echo. Think of way as sort of if you have a Bored Ape on Ethereum, you would say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I can bring that Bored Ape as my avatar into a game and play it? We already demonstrate this. We have a protocol that could do called Sweet Echo. Basically, you go to this portal, you say, basically create a doppelganger for this. But the point is now create this new NFT on our blockchain. It's an
Wait, what's
object.
this called? I want to check this out. Is there a portal now?
It's called Sui. It's if you go to the sui.io, sui.io, you'll see the example of the game. I don't know off the top of my head if it's like open to everyone right now. Right now,
Yeah.
if you look at the getting, if you go to the docs.sui.io and you go sort of explore
Oh
prototype,
yeah, this is really
see the
cool.
examples, you'll see that we have games. There's a Panzer Dog X SU Sui kind of example. You see a video of this example, how the portal works. You can do a Sui echo
Oh
to
yeah, this is so cool.
right. And I
Sweet
basically
echo.
say, here's my Bored Ape. Go bring that into your game. You create this new NFT that you can actually write back to, right? As a game progresses, you can say you now level up, or you have so many kills in the game, or how many times you won and lost. So it's basically a more, sort of like a shadow of the original thing, except it's much bigger and much more powerful. It's
But this is what we're talking about. Like
right,
this is the type of stuff that we need to see in the future. And that relationship is
right.
definitely This is really cool because then so it constantly writes to it, and then can you write if you're the owner of that, can you write back to the NFT? How does that work?
No, you cannot give the owner arbitrary rights to make updates to something like this. Otherwise, they're just going to cheat in the game, right? Think about if
Yeah.
it's a game assets RPG, I'm just going to level up my guy to 99 and done, right? No. So basically, when you create an NFT, the program basically specify who has a right to modify it. So the owner have to say, here's a key. I give you the game engine the right to modify it. But in this case, when you create this, let's say the pencil dog, uh, you know, is
Yeah.
the game engine is only one that has the rights to modify it. But now imagine this. Imagine it's not just Panther Dog. Imagine, say, anybody from the Lucky Cat Studio, any property of the Lucky Cat Studio can modify this. Now, after you finish using this in the, not even finish, why? Because you own this NFT outright, it's on the public ledger. So you can bring that into the, Pencil Dog to play it. But maybe Lucky Cat also kind of build a mini game on their website saying, imagine our next games are coming and you can bring the same NFT to interact with the new game we're publishing and just show you an example of this in the website as a mini
Yeah.
game. Now all of a sudden you can bring one asset from one game, one product to something else, to another product. So you can engage with your fans in a different way. You can, show them a preview, a new game, and see how your character would look like in that game. So again, opening up the possibility just by moving something that's previously stuck in this private box. This is a game that's a private box. Move from internal inside the game to a public ledger, and now all of a sudden you own it outright, and opens up all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah,
So
I mean, crazy possibilities because it's been like 150 episodes since we've talked about the singularity, but it always comes back to that. But yeah, essentially, you have applications that can effectively, if they can start learning data faster than we can. Where does that lead us?
yeah, it's a lot of possibility, right? Again, just remember it's not that scary because the owner of the asset has control, right? You can just say no, right? Ultimately the security of your assets is important. The control is very important. But what we can do, for example, if you have a non-playable character represented as NFT, and you can embed a smart contract in it, all of a sudden it has some kind of algorithm that attached to it, and you move that asset, put it as these assets in your universe. Um, Now you can interact with them, right? So basically, two objects can interact with each other, or the user control one can interact with one that's not user control because it embedded algorithm in that, right? So already have kind of company are thinking about building this kind of assets, right? Not singularity, but maybe with some artificial intelligence, right? And that asset can be used in this universe, can be used in another universe, right? So this is a possibility. You can build assets and leave it to product builder, game builder to figure out how to use this kind of assets.
I can envision a world too. It's like you take that asset back out and you're talking to someone, your friend, you're talking to your friend, and now between your assets and his assets, you could potentially have real world experiences and relationships between those assets too.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, it could be as simple as sort of, kind of some kind of social game, real world social game. It's like, hey, I have an avatar, I have an NFT from this, you have an NFT avatar from this other series, without it's like, hey, let's see what happens if we give
Yeah.
permission for them to interact. So there could be some, kind of Easter egg, right? It's like you have now, like the real world Pokemon type of scenario. Mine is a water type, yours is a fire type, and one wins, the other one loses. The winner gets some additional points, and the loser, lose something, right? So there's a lot of possibility here.
Everything we're talking about today kind of comes down to NFTs and blockchains being these like a cultural asset layer, art, gaming. Um, I'm trying to figure out and going back to like, the conversation I had with the mayor, it's like, what other industries will this touch? Will it be the relationship between your cultural assets and then now touching other industries, or will they launch in parallel, like the insurance market or mortgages or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that's related to the sort of your financial, right? You need to be a lot more careful with it, or you with your identity, you need to be a lot more careful with it. It's not enough to just represent these things with NFTs. You need to have kind of the product that help people safeguard their assets. And I think those same industry will come along a little bit later for that reason. The user experience isn't there. How people manage their keys right now is not that friendly to most of the people, right? What if you lose it and all of a sudden somebody has a lot of control over your assets? So let's be careful with this. But I mean, I think
How are we
the
going to change that? I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. It all comes down to
right.
like there's a bunch of private keys that one person or a bunch of people are holding that controls everything.
Yeah, one step at a time, right? So one of the biggest things right now is it's very scary for people to handle the old key. So you end up having a lot of, sort of custodial wallet kind of scenario. So you go back to having putting your trust in some
Yeah.
large centralized entity. Let's look at how do you solve that particular problem first, right? The biggest problem is if you lose your key, you're done. Basically, you lose your private key, you cannot recover assets, and that is very scary to people. So right now, there's you create a MetaMask, you copy down your seeds somewhere, so if you lose it, you can still recover it. That is very very hard for most people. People
Scary.
don't even have good passwords, right? Let alone keeping some seed phrases. Or you have a hardware wallet, which is also very foreign, for most people, and doesn't really, it's yet another safeguard, yet another tool to use, but it's also foreign to most people. So we have designed a protocol called kelp. It's published a couple years ago, where you have a way to reactively recover your key if you lose it, and you can recover it without relying on third party. That's a key thing. So basically, all you need is the wallet to facilitate a transaction, on-chain transaction, to challenge it. Say, I lost it, but I claim this is mine. And if no one else claim it and I can prove it, and after some time, rotate the key, basically change your password, and I retain ownership of the asset just lost. So these kind of protocol is a step towards kind of providing the assurance to people, say, hey, I now can change my password. Almost like change my password to recover my account without trusting an centralized entity.
Yeah, that's what people want at the end of the day. That's a decentralized identity, but the ability to have like if you lose access to get it back without having to go to like a centralized location. That's
Right.
the gold standard. It just makes me think that we're still so early with all of this and we're still building out all the experiences that the users want, what we think they want and how they want it. Hey, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and coming on Untold Stories and this has been one of the most in-depth episodes I've had in the past few weeks. So thank you for giving me that and teaching me a bunch of new things actually, which is, damn, if I could learn something new every day, that's a good day, right?
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, there's a lot to learn. We have a lot of documentation, a lot of examples. I urge you, all the listeners or viewers, to go to sui.io. That's SUI, which stands for water in Japanese, because it's meant to be this boundless, kind of layer one. Anything's possible. So sui.io, please take a look. We're very proud of work. So happy you gave me a chance to sort of at least talk about it a little bit.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you
Thank you,
soon.
Charlie. Take care.